Sean Boyson. I just wanted to follow up on, I believe it was Eric, and his comment about page numbers and citations with noting yet another problem that will come up. There's a long tradition of adding content to books called the back of the book index. But of course, the back of the book index is numbered with pages, and when you convert that content to reflowable text, they never answer the question in the first place of where on the page that particular phrase or topic occurred, but you didn't have to care so much when you were looking up a page number. Now we do care, and so I have no solution for this problem. I'd simply note it as another problem to be solved. When you want to start extracting that content out of the back of the book index, which is a very rich source of information about what the publisher thought was important, you've got to solve the problem of how do we map page numbers onto reflowable text.
This is an issue that we currently have, and it has to do with. Oh, sorry, Alex is my name, and I work for the design tech. Okay, so this is an issue that we currently have, and it is that annotating documents. Sometimes you have the documents in HTML, sometimes you have the documents in PDF format, and sometimes you have documents in other formats as well. The problem that we have is that we cannot. The annotations that we do over PDF are not easy to move across different formats, meaning that somehow we lose the annotations from the PDF when we move those annotations into the HTML version of the paper, and the only way to go around that we have found so far, it is to have those annotations coming from the PDF into the HTML version as comments. So I don't know if anybody here knows how to deal with that issue of a multiplicity of formats.
Twinkle. One of the approaches, if that can be pushed up to the interface level sometimes, is the interface can make the coordination. If you're doing corrections, for example, it's very common to have a PDF you're looking at and have the OCR that was made, however it was made, right next to it. And the interface has some solution prior to the coordination that works within the context of the interface. Then the annotation you save out of that, is to basically have an annotation that has two targets. So now I have a body, a comment, or whatever statement I'm being made that applies to this thing anchored in the PDF and this thing anchored in HTML. It's not an elegant solution or perfect for all cases, but that's one way that you can model it.
Actually, I have. Sorry. So I'm going to speak from a certain kind of W3C perspective, and I think it's very interesting, the larger question of how do we annotate all types of things, PDF, etc. But for me personally, and I think if we're going to limit things, I think the scope that the working group should be working on is how to do this on the web, which is HTML. That's my personal opinion. I think that would be great if we can also get those other things, but my primary case is annotations for the web.
Then I don't know if my comment stands, but we exchange. So we have an annotator of HTML. We partner with Utopia for PDF in UK. They do annotation of PDF. We exchange open annotation format as pure as it is, and we just display the same annotation in both formats without changing anything about the anchoring.
So just to add my W3C sites to show that even within W3C, we don't always agree with one another. I, for example, would be very interested to see annotation added to data which is published on the web. So HTML is a bit too restrictive for me.
I just meant as opposed to PDF.
Oh, okay.
Greg Kellogg, I think I want to echo Ivan's sentiment there that many groups sort of confuse syntax with data model, and I think it's important that we focus on establishing what a data model is, so that we're not talking about annotating an HTML document, but rather the entities which can be described within that model. And that's the only sane way to be able to deal with multiple formats.
Sorry, just to be clear, when I wasn't talking about the idea of annotations, like the data model and all these other things. Absolutely, they should be able to address multiple things. I'm talking specifically about robust anchoring, which is the specific topic here. Robust anchoring specifically to HTML, but also to what the heck? But also to data, to different data formats and things like that are exposed on the web. The web is the part that I'm most concerned with.
Robert Castis. I just wanted to add to the problem of multiple versions that, I mean, it's a bigger issue, but one of the points, of course, are permanent identifiers. So having a central place where you could go and find out, well, these are the different versions of this text, whereas the problem of what are the same versions of the same text is, of course, a big one. So.
All the discussion should not happen around this table only. So looking around whether there is...
There is somebody with their hand open, raised right now, so let's...
So I want to talk about failure. Robust anchoring is...
Nick.
Sorry, I'm Nick. Robust anchoring is an admirable goal, but sometimes it won't work.
Yes.
And annotations won't be able to be... So, for example, Kevin raised the issue of annotating content that has simply been removed from the document. And there are some really difficult problems about how you display that to the user, which we probably won't standardize, but there are also questions at a lower level of how we expose to programmatic interfaces that re-anchoring has failed.
Yep.
So while waiting for somebody else to comment, sorry. So one thing on okay, this which is, as far as I know, also part of the model, is that the general model should be flexible enough to allow different kinds of robust anchoring, which does not mean that the working group has to standardize all available things. I think there is an extensibility point here that we have to be very conscious about from the very start, and to have the model extensible and fill in whatever we need are important now, and maybe later will be filled by somebody else for something else.
My name is Michael Scharf, and I have a question which goes into a slightly different direction. Suppose we have this wonderful diversity of hundreds of different annotation providers, and I'm a user sitting on my website, I'm looking at a website. How would I figure out if there's any annotation available from all these sites without compromising my privacy? I mean, sending all the time messages to all these hundreds of sites that I'm currently browsing that site just to hope that someone has a hit for that site. I mean, this is, I think, a quite interesting problem for me.
I think security and privacy are a big issue.
That's a good question.
Okay, so I would say for that, the only thing that... Oh, my name is Randall. The only thing that comes to mind quickly is that if you're talking about the privacy of the places you subscribe to annotations not knowing that you subscribe, that seems kind of impossible. But maybe that you're not there in this particular moment, it seems possible, and even probably for other reasons such as like the performance of distribution, it might make sense to have hubs of sorts the same way like PubSub Hubbub did with RSS of like at some level there are providers, aggregators that are hosted and online all the time, and those can push to one another. And then if you trust that hub, you can go anytime and check it for whether or not there's things that you care about.
I just know that this issue is not an anchoring issue. No. It's a different issue, but it's not anchoring. And we actually will have a session later about things like legality and
I thought it was open discussion now.
No. It's
we're trying to limit it
to this topic.
All I was going to say is I'm going to be talking about this a lot later, and I would like to.
Okay,
I think
then that's all right. That's all right.
It's our turn.
And Tim, you are standing between us and lunch.
Okay. Last little thing. Just return to Doug's comment about if you look up, just for HTML instead of HTML in PDF, it really doesn't address Alex's question, because I can show a copy of a digitization that has now been serialized in HTML 5 different ways.
Absolutely.
So now I have to anchor across all those different ways, and if I turn around and feed a phone rather than a tablet rather than a computer, I still have the problem of migrating those anchors through all the different HTML
serializations. It's going to be hard enough with HTML, so let's not introduce another format. No, it's still a big problem. Tontek, do you really want to stop everybody from eating lunch? Do you want to stop everybody from eating lunch? Is it that important? It seems that it is that important. Just a moment. We have something that is more important than meat eating. Oh, is lunch not ready yet?
Yeah, it's 11:30.
That's what we have. Oh, isn't it? Oh. Tontek! What time is lunch?
12.
Okay. Never mind. Okay, but we'll probably have to go on to another topic. We might have to change our schedule here.
Okay. Well, good to know that I'm not the blocker for lunch, at least. I'm Tontek. I just typed myself into IRC.
When you're holding the mic, if you hear yourself echoing, you're holding it too close. Hold it about 6 to 8 inches away.
Okay. How about this? Is that better? Okay. The anchoring problem, I think, is a really important one to a lot of us. That cool URIs don't change, or URLs as we like to call them these days. But I wanted to posit that perhaps there may be a path to solving some of these fragile anchoring problems with questioning the assumption of an annotation provider. So we mentioned hundreds of annotation providers. What about the use case or scenario where a user has 0 annotation providers, and they host the annotation themselves, and they host the anchor, and they host the context around the anchor all themselves without having to communicate to any other site at all? And so I would like to offer that as another approach that's worthy of considering.
I think that's actually part of our model anyway. So I certainly want private annotation sometimes.
Absolutely. So clarification. We're going to have a break after this conversation. So this conversation can go indefinitely. We actually have a break scheduled, and lunch will come towards the middle of the break. So we can indefinitely speak, and we can probably open it up to other topics as well. And say your name?
Hi, my name is...
He hasn't said it.
Okay, so my name is Mitar. I wanted to say that maybe we should also not forget that we will have users of those annotations, and those users know how to read. So if they see a broken anchor, they can also fix this anchor. So we might want to use things like Wikipedia. If some people find a broken link, they can update the broken link. And similar thing here, like when you see the annotation which has a broken anchor, you can ask a user, can you find where it should be in the new version of the document?
Just a comment on Philippe Aigrin from Comment. Just a comment about how different use situations might impact the degree to which anchoring is tractable. Our tool is used about half for collaborative writing and half for collaborative annotation on existing text. And when you have collaborating writing, it means that from one version of a text to another, large segments of the text are going to disappear, be reshuffled, and the problem of robust anchoring becomes close to untractable or more precisely, the possible solution turned out to be more cumbersome than simply detaching comments and then letting the user reorganize them. In contrast, when you have a text that is supposed to be stable, the text has been written, it's like that, in somewhere on the web. And of course, we all know it's not going to be stable. There will be some change in DOM or whatever, some library of that will be modified and that will turn out to be previous anchoring to no longer hold. There, the problem probably is tractable and using context, using other things. And I think that's really important to focus on this aspect because solutions are at hand, or I believe so.
Phil Descent. We're talking a lot about fuzzy anchoring for text, but also would like to, at some point, start to address fuzzy anchoring for video, for example, video annotations with different versions of the same video. How do we solve the fuzzy anchoring for video fragments?
I think also another thing, this is Tim again, another thing I want to keep in mind when we talk about the anchoring and persistence and so on, sometimes you don't want the annotation to persist if a text changed a certain way. If I'm doing something that's a correction and I'm not worried about the provenance of why the correction was made, I may be perfectly happy that that annotation is no longer anchored once the text has changed. It becomes a non-factor. In other cases where I'm trying to say something about the meaning of something and the document reflows or something, I do want my annotation to carry to the reflow, the new serialization. That becomes a different thing. We tried to address some of this with trying to put in the potential in the model so you could specify this annotation is tied to the document at a particular point in time or in a particular context so that you wouldn't propagate annotations inappropriately beyond their original intent. That's something else we want to try to accommodate.
About the issue of anchoring to different kinds of media, I think W3C has addressed this in the media fragments work that we did. It allows you to, they use a URL syntax, and that would be appropriate, I think, but there's other syntaxes that are possible. But the basic idea is that it allows you to specify a timestamp for a media stream. Now, I'm going to give you a caveat in a moment. A timestamp for media stream, and also if it's I'll say a picture, a visual, it allows you to give a viewport within that particular within a section of an image or a video. So you could have, let's say you're doing captioning, you could have the at a particular timestamp and a rectangle around a particular person's face, and say this person is saying that, and then the timestamp shifts and the rectangle shifts to another speaker, etc. And you could keep going along those lines. So I think media fragments is actually has already addressed that issue. I think we just need to have a way of tying that into how we're anchoring things. But there could be other things that are more complex. One thing that could be more complex is which version of a video am I looking at, and where does how does the timestamp correlate to the actual timestamp in that video, for example.
So that leads also to the question, when are two documents close enough to be treated as equivalent, and how would I find the links for a document which has maybe the same content as another one, but a very different link?
So, not to distract from the whole. Oh, got it. Not to distract from the whole thing, but I think actually there's stuff that we're going to standardize, and there's stuff that's going to happen at the service level. And so maybe what somebody does is they provide a service to correlate multiple sources of the same thing. Maybe what we say is, here's this document, and here's this annotation on it, and somebody says, hey, I happen to know that this document is also located over here, and it has this slightly different offset, and they provide that extra service on top of things. I think that we're already tackling a huge problem by trying to anchor to any document, then trying to say which versions of which documents are slightly different. And I think that gets far deeper than basic standardization that we should be attempting at the first part.
Yes, just quickly to come back on what you were saying about the fuzzy anchoring in media for video cases. I think that there's got to be some kind of an image analysis to be able to implement some of the fuzzy anchoring for, let's say, video, because you would want to do a sort of an image analysis of what's before and what's after so that you can map it. And that would require processing the image before. So there's I guess, a lot of implications with that.
I come to you. One more comment maybe that we have to realize that some, not necessarily the last one, but some of the issues of anchoring is actually a problem for other communities as well. We have to be careful not to lock ourselves into our community. Let's say the library community, when they have to add metadata and information about publications, they face exactly the same kinds of problems. Although they don't think in terms of annotation per se, but they have to address the issue of adding metadata to different versions of the same document, different formats, etc. So we have to look at what others do and turn it around, actually, and this is more in direction of the working group. I think that some of the ideas that are in the open annotation model, for example, today, or this extensible way of doing things, are valuable enough to be sort of extracted as a separate document because it can be used by other communities as well, and we should not be, close ourselves. Eric.
I understand, but the service announcement.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Get right to you, Kevin. So there was a mismatch between the planned lunchtime and the planned lunchtime. So we will have, the lunch will be at 12:30. So we have two options. We could, we have people to hear.
I have no idea, so this is a question really for Doug and Ivan. There are some gestures, physical gestures, which originated in the Occupy movement, which can be very, very useful for clarifying what kind of question somebody is about to ask, and whether or not, and how they feel about what is currently being said. And if people feel like it would be, I personally have found this incredibly helpful.
I was interested.
So, okay. I don't think that I don't want to get into a whole meta thing.
No, just hang on. Give me a second. I'm asking, I have found these very helpful for facilitating discussions like this. If people would like me to, for 5 minutes, less than that, 2 minutes, run through what those are, then we can see how uncomfortable people feel about them and whether or not they add to the discussion. So those of you who know, somebody's twinkling already. So okay, all right. I'm gonna stand on a chair. Okay, this is really, really quick. First of all, in general, if you approve of or generally feel positive about, this is not going to work because I'm holding a microphone, the thing that is currently being said or discussed, you twinkle. This is designed to make you feel really. No. This is. I think this is a good idea, right? If you generally disapprove or disagree with what's currently being said, you can twinkle down, right? This is okay, right? If this is probably unlikely to happen in this scenario, but this discussion as where it's got to makes me feel really uncomfortable. Leave the room.
Or you could just leave the room.
And this is no, to be serious, like this is unlikely to happen in this group, but it might happen, and it's important that you have a way of expressing that to the speaker. Okay, next thing, questions. I have a direct point on the thing that we're talking about now. Okay?
Okay.
I want to come back to you, and I want to say something about something that you have just said. Okay? I have a next point. I'm putting myself in the queue for next question.
That's reasonable.
And the last one, really important. I need clarification of what you just said, and I really won't be able to understand what you're saying until you clarify for me. If you've just said soap or something, I need to know what that stands for. That's it. I'm done.
It's much more down-to-earth issues, Kevin, but...
So the thing that I was getting out of that past discussion, and a little bit of stuff going on in the IRC as well, is that there's lots of clever people who want to do clever things with fuzzy matching and guessing what happened and stuff like that. We're not going to standardize that as a set of algorithms unless we want to spend years bike shedding. But what we can standardize is keeping multiple variants of a potentially useful anchor material for that processing. So that comes to saying, don't just have the URI or the book page number, have the URI and the page number and a piece of the text and an image grab of the text, potentially, or an image grab of the video, and just give us ways of saying, here's a chunk of media in formats we already understand how to store, and say these belong as a bundle together. And that, I think that may even help with the multiple language thing as well. It's like, if you say the assumption is, I'm giving you lots of opportunities to store these anchors, we have well-defined ways of expressing these, and then separate that from the other half of the algorithm of that. And I know that it runs into the copyright issues, but I think it's... we're already seeing practice like this. There's a practice on Twitter now, which is screen grab a piece of the thing you're linking to so that you don't have to summarize it in the tweet.
From my perspective, that reduces the user utility of the idea of annotation dramatically. And in my opinion, it reduces it dramatically because then you don't have interoperability between systems on how you can actually link back to the thing.
No, but you have resilience.
At the cost of robustness.
No, absolutely not.
Well, I think
much more robust.
Sure.
Rob Sanderson. So yeah, I completely agree with Kevin that more information equals more robustness. That if you have the character offset and the quote and what it looks like as an image and the audio transcription and you have a much better chance to reconstruct that segment later down the line when the thing has changed slightly in one of those dimensions.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Anna. I've heard a lot of talk of documents and files and sort of formats, but we do a lot of work with the Semantic Web. And so I want to make sure that when we talk about anchoring, we're also thinking about anchoring for things that are, for example, if you quote a piece of a journal article in your blog post, that you're able to, bring the annotations for that across as well. So, I think it's really important that we're focused on the content and not just the document level resources.